Hi, this is Dr. Gregory Sadler. I'm a professor of philosophy and the president and founder of an educational consulting company called Reason.io, where we put philosophy into practice. I've studied and taught philosophy for over 20 years, and I find that many people run into difficulties reading classic philosophical texts. Sometimes it's the way things are said or how the text is structured. But the concepts themselves are not always that complicated, and that's where I come in. To help students and lifelong learners, I've been producing longer lecture videos and posting them to YouTube. Many viewers say they find them useful. What you're currently watching is part of a new series of shorter videos, each of them focused on one core concept from an important philosophical text. I hope you find it useful as well. Aristotle begins his work on interpretation by saying, let's take a look at first noun and verb, onoma kai rhema, two important terms, and then from that we can start to look at other matters like affirmation and denial, sentence, and proposition, all those things that we build out of nouns and verbs. And he's going to do this by starting by talking about words, or we could even say sounds, phone, things that come out of our mouth that make a noise. And he says words are symbols or signs of affections or impressions of the soul. Now that's a kind of loose translation provided here. So signs or symbols is symbola in Greek. It's something that symbolizes, stands in the place of another. And affections or impressions of the soul, they're not two different things. They're actually pathematon of the soul, the psyche, right? So it doesn't mean pathe in the sense of just emotions, but really anything that the soul can undergo. So impressions doesn't work too badly. And Aristotle is going to draw a connection between the language that we're using and the thoughts that we have in our head as well. So he's going to begin by noting that the words themselves, which are significative, don't yet have truth or falsity in them. They have to have something else going on. And same thing goes, he says, for the thoughts in our minds, the noema. They could be lacking atheis, right? Truth, or they don't do the verb of truthing or of being false or lying, however you want to translate that. You have to have something else going on for that to be the case, and this is what we call combination or division, which is synthesis and diaresin. That's going to come a bit later, and that's what happens in propositions and indeed in many sentences. But before that, we got to look at the building blocks that we're working with. So he begins by talking about nouns, and it just means a name of something. We often teach, there's proper nouns that could be named like Socrates or Gregory Sadler, but, everything can have a name. And he's going to say, what is a noun? A noun is a sound, again, a phone, which has a meaning, or literally which conveys meaning, semantike. It signs, it symbolizes, and it's going to be doing so by convention or agreement. So there isn't any noun that has its nouniness, its word inherent in it by the very nature of things. Aristotle thinks that, different people use different words to convey the same thing. So by agreement, kata syntheken, and this could be an agreement, for example, in a school of philosophy, we'll let this be called this, or, mathematics. but oftentimes it's an agreement that nobody actually like sat down and agreed to. It's just within the particular culture or society, the group of language users. And he says it also has no reference to time. Aneu chronon. Chronos is time, and so it's without time. So he's going to say, you know, if you think about steed or vessel or anything like that, you're not referencing time in doing so. So there's more that he's going to say, but I want to hold off on that until we've looked at verb, which is you could say, not necessarily correlative of noun, but the other major part of speech. So verb is rhema, and he's going to tell us that a verb is a sound, again, phone, which not only conveys a particular meaning, right, same as a noun, but also has a reference to time. But a little bit later, he's going to say verbs by themselves are actually nouns. They are names of things, but they're a little bit different than plain old nouns. Why? Because they do have a time reference. And there's another key aspect to it as well. He says that it indicates always that something is said or asserted of something. So that is ton kath heteru legomenon semeon, right? So, you know, the things that are being said are the thing that is being said of the other thing that is being said. So one thing is said of another. So, you know, for example, Socrates swims, you're saying swims of Socrates, or Socrates exists, right? Socrates has died. You're saying things of something there. And if we say something like the Socrates doll, which is a fake of Socrates, does not exist, well, we're going to get to indefinite things in a moment. Let's just say that it does exist. You're asserting it of something else, right? The Socrates doll. And he's going to go on and say, let's explain what it has a time reference means. So health is a noun. Is healthy is a verb, not a noun. The latter conveys its own meaning, but also conveys that the state signified, namely health, now is the state. So, you know, there's a time concern involved there. So if you've got those down, then we can talk about a few other important features. Both with nouns and with verbs, Aristotle is going to say we can think of some interesting things that are not technically nouns or verbs. So he says, consider not man and things like that. Uk anthropos. He says we could call them indefinite nouns, right? We use them of all kinds of things, non-existent as well as existing. They are not denials or sentences as such. We are saying something, but we're saying something not quite of something, you know. So it's indefinite, aoristos. It's not so definite as saying, you know, doggy over there, or Socrates. And we can say the same thing of verbs as well. They can be indefinite in a similar way. Is not ill, is not well, he says. I wouldn't call these, for my own part, verbs. They do have the time reference and function as predicates, but I don't know of any recognized name. So let's call them indefinite verbs as well. So you see what he's doing there. The other thing that's important is, and he actually uses the same term, ptosis, which means like the way things fall out. He talks about case for nouns. Now, this is part of Greek grammar and the part of many Indo-European languages grammar. We've kind of lost this in English, so it might be a little bit hard for some people to relate to. He is going to use the examples of philo or to philo, and he says these are cases of nouns and not nouns themselves, right? We would say, well, there's just a preposition there, or there's something signifying that there's a possession, but we can talk about the possessive case, right? We don't do that in English grammar anymore, but we do have tense. Again, not quite as developed as it is in most of the other Indo-European languages, but tense means the particular time of the verb. So we can talk about the future tense. So-and-so will be healthy. We can talk about the past tense. So-and-so was healthy. We can talk about the present tense. So-and-so is healthy. And there's all sorts of other possibilities as well. So verbs and nouns, those are the key things about them. And then he's going to start using them as kind of building blocks. So if we put verbs and nouns together, what do we get? We get a sentence. Now, sentence is translating logos. This is a Greek term which is very broad, and it's meaning some sort of, significant speech, or it could be, written down or thought or something like that. And he wants to clarify that we're still at a kind of basic level. Sentences are not all propositions, or they don't, they don't have the character of being propositions. We could say apophantikos, right? They're not all doing that sort of work. Why? Because not all sentences are necessarily expressing truth or falsity. If they are, well, then they can be propositions. And that's what Aristotle devotes a lot of his discussion in this work to, are propositions. But you could have, and he says, examples of things like prayer. A prayer is neither true nor false, but it is a sentence. It is communicating something. And he says, there's a number of other possibilities like this, but their study more properly belongs to the province of rhetoric or poetry, two areas that he actually does have treatises on, albeit the poetics is unfortunately not complete in the form that we have. But, he's saying there's other ways in which we use language where it's not about truth and falsity. And that's enough for getting started with the basic concepts on interpretation. Then we can start moving on to those modes of putting things together where we actually do have truth and falsity, and we're working with propositions.